today, the Witcher 3 next-gen version got yet another new hotfix, this being for PC users, and this is the second hotfix pushed out this week from CDPR. And for me, this is definitely the better of the two hotfixes when it comes to performance and playability. Yet again, we did not get proper patch notes with this update, but in this post, CDPR does describe a few things that were improved. There are some fixes to photo mode, which is great, although I don't actually know what was fixed. There's a bug where when using photo mode on a boat, your hair will basically disconnect from your head and just float shortly behind you. This wasn't actually fixed, so that's not the photo mode fix. And there are a couple of other problems like this all-encroaching red circle bug that could sometimes occur, so maybe that's what was fixed, or even for some PC users, they weren't able to actually turn on photo mode because the key became unbound. So maybe that was the fix, but again, we don't really know, it's just photo mode fixes. There's going to be fixes to the Arabic language in the game, but a bit more impactful for most of us is going to be the fix to toxicity being stuck at max level. And this is actually a pretty big one. One of the most controversial changes, outside of the performance problems, that CDPR added with the next-gen update was actually a comprehensive balance pass. They implemented this mod known as FCR3. It reworks and rebalances a bunch of things in the game and basically led to the meta shifting, including some things around toxicity. So even at lower levels of toxicity, health damage would still occur, and you could have less toxicity overall. Except it seemed like in implementing this midway through a save, so let's say you previously had high toxicity, but then you update your game to the next-gen update, this balance pass is applied and toxicity changes, and thus you had some problems. And some people had a problem where basically their toxicity was always stuck at full and they would constantly lose health as a result, basically making the new update unplayable. Regardless of what they attempted, they cannot actually get their toxicity to lower, and it seems like CDPR has released a fix for that, which is really, really good. There's some Steam Deck improvements, which is pretty vague, and doing some digging, it seems like this may be just a minor performance boost. As of right now, there's no official Steam Deck preset, and even on release, the Witcher 3 next-gen update actually crashed if you try to launch the game on the Steam Deck in the DirectX 12 version. Thankfully, Valve hotfixed that shortly thereafter. But one of the other things that is particularly relevant on the Steam Deck version, but really is going to apply to everyone on PC who gets this hotfix, is the download size. There's been a bunch of confusion around how big these patches are. It's happened with both hotfixes now. Are they 2 gigabytes or are they 40 gigabytes? And basically what's going on here is it's a 2 gigabyte download, but it's going to patch around 40 gigabytes of your files on PC. So the 2 gigabytes that you download is using your internet connection, but the 40 gigabytes is going to be moving around files and will depend on your hard drive speed. So you might have a lightning fast internet connection, but moving around 40 gigabytes of files on a slow hard drive will take a while, and if you have a slow hard drive, it'll take a really long time. But of course, the most interesting thing listed on the patch notes is further overall stability improvements, and at the end they just say there also could be more things. But we'll just focus on the very vague further stability improvements. How are things actually running after this update? And for me, this is genuinely a good update for the game. I ran a few head-to-head comparisons, this being of the first hotfix versus this second hotfix we just got earlier today, and I noticed a couple of pretty interesting things. First, FPS was pretty similar and even at points slightly lower. For context here, I am running the Witcher 3 Next Gen at 4K with everything maxed out on Ultra Plus and ray tracing and DLSS 3.0 turned on. On this outdoor shot of walking near the water and not near too many other people, the game is running fabulously, but there really isn't much of an FPS improvement, and honestly I would say the FPS is functionally equivalent for both of these during this scene. But as we jump over to being inside of a city with far more people and buildings around, things do change a bit. At the start, things were running very similarly, but I noticed slightly lower FPS with the updated version of the game. It's pretty small, and I would say the FPS is functionally equivalent, but you can see during some of these scenes that I'm actually getting slightly lower FPS with this second hotfix. It looks like I'm in a near identical position, or at least I tried to line things up to be perfectly equivalent, but yeah, I feel like I almost lost a couple of frames with this update. Although, in all honesty, before people start freaking out, I think functionally, again, this is basically negligible. Losing 2 to 3 FPS isn't making this playable or unplayable. And even on the flip side, as we go to this outdoor scene in the final test, we have a clear win for the new hotfix. We're running around a small outdoor town, there's a few people around, a lot of lush areas and greenery, and I am consistently getting more FPS on this hotfix. It's still relatively small, but I would say this is actually probably the largest difference of the 3 tests. And thankfully it's a positive difference. I'm definitely getting a nice boost to FPS, even though it's only a couple, it's still a pretty consistent 3 to 5 FPS better. But overall, it's all pretty minor. The broader takeaway is that this new hotfix will not be some huge overhaul to your FPS. Although, thankfully, I did notice some really nice improvements to stutter and really just the overall game feel. I'm not even sure if this is reflected too well in the recorded footage, but while actually playing the game and moving my camera around, things did feel quite a bit better. The game felt like it was running smoother, and although my FPS was pretty similar, it almost felt like this lack of stutter, the additional smoothness, made dealing with lower FPS more bearable. Like here, I'm in a relatively dense city center. I'm getting the FPS all the way down to nearly 40. But in the new update, it didn't bother me nearly as much, and I found it far more enjoyable and far more playable than ever before. And this is not just me. This is one of the most common interpretations of this update you could find online, people noticing less stutter and a bit more playability. For me, it's pretty sizable. I feel like if you're somebody who was really getting headaches or getting frustrated with this stutter, especially in some densely populated areas, I would try this new hotfix. Try turning ray tracing back on and see if you could deal with it now. It is unfortunate we're at a situation where you have to deal with it, and it's not just working out of the box, but regardless, this is where we're at. And before you comment about my shaders being cached, I was testing both of these today on the same install of the game and going back between the two versions, and I noticed an improvement with the hotfix version compared to the other one. Unfortunately, there are a bunch of other bugs that are still very present here. One thing I had several times that was pretty interesting is performance plummeting when loading saves and after loading a save in general. So after loading a save, sometimes my FPS would just kind of be cut by like 10 FPS. Like if I was standing somewhere and then loaded a save of the exact spot I was standing, all of a sudden I was getting 10 FPS less for some reason. And I could continue to load the save and continue to lower my FPS to a certain degree. The way to fix this was basically just restart the game and load the save from the main menu instead. But things like flickering and pop-in are largely untouched, and of course many of the problems people on consoles are having are not addressed at all, because this is a PC-only hotfix. We just saw a really nice comparison video on the next-gen update from Digital Foundry, who are pretty much the kings of creating comparison videos and evaluating performance of games, and their conclusions have largely reflected what many people in the community are saying. The DirectX 11 version has way better performance compared to the DirectX 12 version and basically looks the same outside of ray tracing. So if you just want to play this new update, using it on DirectX 11 is really the way to go, it seems, unless you could somehow manage ray tracing performance. As well as how it seems like the DirectX 12 version of this Witcher 3 Next Gen update is going to be more CPU bound than previously expected. And in particular, single core performance seems like it is dragging a lot of people down. One of the other pretty big issues that a lot of people are getting frustrated about with the Witcher 3 Next Gen is it looks like HBAO Plus from Nvidia was actually removed from the game with the Next Gen update. What this will do, and you can see this nice comparison being shared around that I'll have linked down below, is create shadows around objects, and in turn, it creates a really nice visual improvement at a fraction of the FPS cost of ray tracing. It's not really clear why this was removed from the game, but if you're playing on DirectX 11 or DirectX 12 with the next gen update, you can no longer turn this on. It's just not there anymore. It almost seems like Nvidia was like, oh, we'll have ray tracing now, we don't need that old thing, but then most people out there can actually run the game with ray tracing, and now they also don't have this other visual improvement. And there's even been some conspiracy theories that they actually removed it to make the ray tracing comparisons, like ray tracing on versus off, look even better, but I'm not really sure that's the case. Either way, that's a rundown of the hotfix update, what I noticed and my major takeaways. Yet again, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments. What is your performance like with this hotfix? Honestly, I wish we got better patch notes in the future for some of these, a bit more detailed on what's actually being fixed or what they're doing. But to play devil's advocate, I can kind of understand how we're getting really close to the holidays. They're likely trying to get these out as fast as possible, and perhaps the documentation is falling aside as a result. It definitely is a more extreme circumstance, releasing an update just 2 weeks before the holidays and then trying to fix a bunch of problems with that update in that 2-week time frame. Either way, hopefully you found this informative again, but with that, I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all later.